Hello and welcome to this week's devlog video of Road to Your City. Sorry for not being able to upload a video last week. I will explain why I could not upload a video last Monday, and this devlog will also be a little bit more technical at some point, as some of you have requested. There will also be two news I will tell you at the end of the video. The first thing is about something I've mentioned in devlog number 4, I guess, and has to be postponed from November to December. And the other thing might be interesting for those people who like the platform Twitch. So watch the video until the end. Enough talk for the moment, let's start the video. First short announcement before coming to the game. The Kickstarter is still in preparation and I also worked on it a bit. I've figured out a date in the meantime when the Kickstarter will start. This will be end of January, since January is not the best month to run a Kickstarter, so I shifted it that most of the campaign will run in February. But now let's come to the game. The past weeks I've worked on fixing a lot of old stuff and implementing new functions. As written on the Discord, I had to work on two bigger engine issues, since they had a big influence on the performance. Actually, I've worked on the first issue. The second one has not been solved so far, but it's on the upper part of my to-do list. The first issue was about building selection. In general, you have to click on buildings to see the radius. It will be shown on the map in green if the radius is valid, or in red if it's not, for example, if the building is not connected to a road or something. Most of the buildings only show a single radius around the selected object, but there are some exceptions. One exception is the bus station with its bus stops. If you place a bus station, you can define lanes and place bus stops, and the player should easily see the coverage of all the connected bus stops. In the previous solution, the more bus stops the player has placed on the map, the more the FPS dropped, as you can see here in the background. And I would like to tell you why this happened. First of all, I have to tell you something about the game structure in the engine. There's a world class which will be instantiated every time a game is created or loaded. This world has a lot of properties, but the most interesting properties explaining the current problem are the objects and the tiles. In tiles, the informations are stored if a tile is a grass tile, a water tile, or a road tile. And in objects, all the buildings or objects like trees, stones and so on are stored and rendered on top of the tiles. But both are of course connected to each other, since if the player places a new building, the covered tiles need to be updated that they now contain a building reference. And if you want to delete the tile, it has to be checked if a smaller object like a tree is on this tile, and if so, it has to be removed. For being able to display multiple objects like bus stops, I added a global list for all the selected buildings. So every time a building gets selected, it was added to this list. When a building has been deselected, it has been removed. If the player has placed, for example, 5 bus stops, there were of course 5 entries in the selected radius objects list. Then I checked for each tile if this tile could be found in the radius of one of the selected objects, and if so, it was marked as selected. As you could imagine, that's not a good approach at all, and I used this implementation long time ago before thinking about the possibility that there might be a lot of objects being selected at once. So I had to reorganize the structure. Each tile now has a new property with radius information. If a building is selected, it instantly checks the radius information for the affected tiles and store them in the tile directly. so there's no more need for checking the tile information over and over again. But what about the selection of an object which is about to be placed? The already placed bus stops are static on the map, but the building which is about to be placed can move, so the radius information needs to be updated for a single object, which is the so-called cursor object. So the radius information of a tile will contain a property called selected for the selected radius objects and a property selected by cursor for the cursor object. To secure tiles stay selected if the cursor object overlaps with the radius of a selected object and suddenly moves out of the radius. Finally, I got that implemented, and when I now place a lot of bus stops next to each other, the FPS won't drop anymore. The second bigger issue is about the traffic system, but I wasn't able to change that so far. Currently, all the vehicles are stored in the tiles, since they can contain road tiles, and road tiles can contain lanes, and lanes can contain vehicles, and so on. But this kind of structure is very expensive in a city builder like Road to a City. Actually, vehicles also are objects, so I now think it would be a better fit in the objects property in the world. Currently, the architecture isn't perfect at all, so this needs to be changed definitely, and I will update you in one of the next devlogs when it has been fixed. I also worked on some new features. One thing which has been added is the missing job indicator for special objects. If the player places the first fire station, it will have a little blue icon above it when the building has been completed. That shows the player that there aren't enough jobs for firemen available, and the player has to assign jobs for this sector. If the player keeps ignoring the job assignment, the fire station will kind of be ignored, even if it's in the radius of some apartments. And the people's satisfaction will also go down because of its low productivity value. I added another little engine extension just for some visuals. Previously, the money just changed its numbers when money has been added or subtracted. I didn't like that hard change, so I added a transition component which kind of animates the transition from the start until the end value. This is a generic function which means that I can work with any kind of numbers, no matter if it's a small or a big number, or even a float value with comma as a separator. I also worked on balancing again, so I had to play the game a lot, which I surprisingly enjoyed. You should know that a lot of developers don't like their own games because they see them in a different point of view. As I mentioned, I kind of like playing the game, especially building up the city from the start, and I found some bugs I wanted to get rid of. Some of the buildings were way too cheap, especially the upgrading of, for example, the football pitch. Some fundings could not be requested even there was enough money available, so I checked up the funding methods and found the solution quite quickly. After the big selected radius change, the apartments were no longer being focused when the player wanted to place a new building. Actually, I had to remove some lines of the previous code and replace it by a new single line, and it now works like a charm again. In addition to all the existing stuff, I also wondered about small new features for the game. There will be another tab in the tech tree pop-up window with an entry I don't want to reveal so far, but it will occupy the player for sure, and that's one thing I was looking for. As well, I was looking for some minor features like, for example, not only bus stations and bus stops reduce the traffic in the city, but also upgrading the supermarket for supporting online shopping brings in the same effect. Now I want to come to the first thing I mentioned in devlog number 4. Today I would like to announce that the next close alpha will be available on Friday, December the 14th. The previous testers will keep their access, and I hope to get some very good feedback again. In addition to that, I would like to give away another alpha key to one of you. There are two things you have to do for it. The first thing is you have to be on the Discord server, since all the feedback communication will happen on the Discord. And the second thing is that you have to retweet my tweet from this afternoon. The link is down in the description. And write a retweet message using the hashtags indiedev and indiegame. And a short text why you think Road to City is an interesting project. The best retweet until Friday will get an alpha key, which can be redeemed on Steam. Another thing I was wondering about was making a live stream about the development of Road to a City. But I don't know if this is still be interesting for you. I asked this question on the Discord server a long time ago, but if you would still be interested in seeing some live action, you could leave me a comment or give this video a thumbs up. As always, before ending this video, there is the next Patreon shoutout. Again, a big thanks goes to Boundfox, Ed, and Manuel Rauber. Thank you very much for your support. And that's it for this week's devlog video. I hope you liked it. If you did, I would be happy if you give this video a like. If you want to get notified when the next devlog video comes out, just subscribe to the channel or activate the bell. Have a great start into the next week, the week of the next closed alpha, and see you next time. Cheers!